Hi, my name is Daniel Barkowitz, and I am going to be your host for this evening's presentation on FSAID and FAFSA completion. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are thrilled to have so many of you with us tonight. And if you're catching the recording after the fact, we're thrilled that you have a chance to join us via the recording as well. Again, my name is Daniel Barkowitz. I am the Assistant Vice President of Student Financial Assistance and Employment at the University of Miami. And it's my pleasure to be with you tonight in this webinar being sponsored by Bridge to Life of South Florida and the Broward Education Foundation to talk to you about how to access FAFSA, how to complete the FAFSA, and really why the FAFSA is so important to you, either as a senior in high school or as a parent or someone who cares about a senior in high school. First, before we get started with our presentation, just a couple of logistics for the Zoom call this evening. At this point, probably many of you are familiar with Zoom. We've all used it before. Just a reminder, there is a Q&A function. We're going to use that Q&A to answer your questions. We have folks in the chat who are available or behind the scenes who are available to answer your questions that you submit via the Q&A. So please, again, if you have a question, feel free to submit them via the Q&A. And just the chat, we are not going to monitor. We may use it to let you know about announcements as we go through. But in general, again, if you have questions, specifically type them in the Q&A. We will try to answer them. I will say, please hold your questions as we go along, because chances are I probably will answer the question you have as we go through. So again, it's a pleasure to have all of you with us tonight. You should be seeing my screen. And again, we're going to go through and walk through what the FAFSA is, why it's important, and how to get access to the FAFSA as we go through this evening. So let's start with a question about what is the FAFSA? So the FAFSA stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. It is the single application to apply for federal financial aid to go to post-secondary education, college, university, trade school, graduate school, anything after high school. That is the application. It is a free application, and you do not have to pay to complete the application. So again, it is the FAFSA free application for federal student aid. FAFSA also can be used to apply for most state aid and almost all institutional financial aid as well. I'll talk a little bit later about some exceptions to that. Typically, the FAFSA opens in October 1 of the year in which the student is a senior in high school. So if you're a senior in high school, or you're a parent of a student who's a senior in high school, FAFSA opened this year a little late. It typically is supposed to open on October 1. This year it opened December 1, but in the future it will open on October 1 of every year. And you can start filling out the FAFSA after that October 1 date. And you do fill out the FAFSA every year that the student plans on going to school. It's really important the FAFSA get completed because that is how you access financial aid. So again, this is an annual application. Now, FAFSA may be only one of several financial aid applications a student might have to complete. There are a couple of other applications in the state of Florida. There's a Florida financial aid application that is required of all seniors in high school. And there's also a form called the CSS Financial Aid Profile that some schools may require in addition to the FAFSA. But the FAFSA is the basic system that really begins for you and starts the application process for you. So why does the FAFSA matter? A couple of pieces of information for you. Number one, seniors in high school who complete a FAFSA are 84% more likely to immediately enroll in college. And that's important because what we know in the state of Florida, and I'll show you this in a second, is that most of the jobs in the future are going to require an education beyond high school. Many of the jobs in the state of Florida right now require an education beyond high school. And in fact, in a second, I'll show you some statistics about earnings based on your education level. But before we get there, I also want to highlight for you that last year, in 23-24, there was almost $202 billion with a B given out to undergraduates nationwide to attend college and universities. And you can see the breakdown of all of these different kinds of funds in the pie chart that I've put on the screen for you. What's important to know is you may assume that loans are the largest portion, at least if you follow the news, You've heard a lot about federal student loans or parent loans. The reality is, loans are only about a third of the money that's available to students in the system, and student loans are only about 20% of the total. In fact, the single largest source of financial aid is institutional grants. Those are grants or scholarships being provided by the college and university directly to the students. You can see that almost a third of the money available nationwide comes from institutions providing grants to their own students. Private grants from private sources like foundations or scholarship agencies account for 6% of the funds nationwide. State grants about 7%. So altogether, that's almost 50% just in the form of grants. So it's important, again, to keep in mind that grants are a significant portion and source of financial aid. And I promised you, this is national information. This shows you nationwide what the average weekly take-home earnings are based on education level. You can see that there still is a tremendous payoff to achieving your bachelor's degree or your master's degree in terms of your weekly take-home pay, as well as a reduction in the rate of unemployment the higher up that education ladder that you go. So really important to see that information. And this comes from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. Okay, so how do you complete the FAFSA? If you're going to do the FAFSA, what are their 3 steps? We're going to cover the first step tonight, and then I'm going to give you instructions on step 2 and step 3. There are really 3 important steps. The very first step is creating what's called an FSAID, and that stands for Federal Student Aid Identification. That FSAID is critical to you getting access to the FAFSA, and we're going to walk through that tonight. Step 2 will be the student completing their section of the FAFSA, and step 3 will be the parents or contributors completing their section of the FAFSA and submitting the form on the student's behalf. And we'll cover step 2 and 3 in another webinar we're going to have in a couple of weeks, because it's going to take you some time to get your FSAID submitted, and you need to have one, again, for you as a student and for a parent or parents. So we're going to talk all of that through tonight. So really important that you follow along with that. So the first question is, who completes the FAFSA? And we're going to talk through who are the parties on the FAFSA when you complete a FAFSA, because this is also really important to understand. If you're a family, is it just going to be the student? Is it going to be the student and one parent, the student and 2 parents? How do we define who completes the FAFSA? So let's take this step by step. The very first question you need to answer is, are you a dependent or an independent student? If you're a dependent student, we need your parents' information. If you're independent, we don't. And I know that there may be folks who have an unusual circumstance. I'll talk a bit about that in a second. But let's look first at, how does the federal government define whether or not you're dependent or independent? There are a total of 8 questions that are asked about the student to determine whether or not they're dependent or independent. And if you can answer yes to any of these questions, you, the student, you're considered independent, and we don't need your parents' information. And those questions are the following. Number 1, are you 24 years of age or older? Then you're independent. Number 2, are you working right now on a graduate degree, like a master's degree or a doctoral degree? Number 3, are you married or separated from your spouse but not divorced? Number 4, and again, that's the student who would be married. Number 4, do you have children or other dependents, number 5, who receive more than half of their support from you? Are you supporting children? Number 6, are you an orphan, a ward of the court, in foster care, emancipated, or a homeless youth who's self-supporting and might be at the risk of being homeless? Right? If any of those things are true, you're independent. Number 7, are you currently serving in active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces? Or number 8, are you a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces? If any of those questions are yes, then the student is considered independent and doesn't need parental information. If the answer to all those questions are no, then the student is considered dependent, and we will require parental information. Now, there may be special circumstances where a student would otherwise be a dependent student, but for whatever reason, maybe they're not in touch with their parents, maybe it's an abusive or neglectful situation, maybe they're living with grandparents because there's a parent incarcerated. Whatever the reason might be, there are special circumstances, and there's a process for that in the FAFSA as well, which we can talk about when we do the actual FAFSA submission itself. So don't worry, we've got you covered as well if you have special circumstances. But just to let you know, this is typically how we define who's dependent versus independent. Now let's talk about contributors, and this is an important piece of terminology to know for the FAFSA. The contributor is not what you might think of when you think of a contributor as someone who gives money. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is who contributes information on the FAFSA. And each person who gives information to the FAFSA is called a contributor. For the purposes of the FAFSA, the student is always going to be one of the contributors. So by definition, the student is a contributor of information to the FAFSA. They're providing their own information. If they're independent and married, then the student's spouse will likely be a contributor as well. So if the student is married, the student's spouse might be a contributor. Otherwise, a parent or parents might be a contributor for a dependent student. And we're going to talk about why might you need one parent or two parents. And we're going to talk about this using really a wonderful tool, which I'm going to open up and share with you, which is at studentaid.gov/FAFSA apply/parents. So let's say that my daughter Rachel is applying for financial aid. I do have a daughter named Rachel. She actually did graduate college. She's a good choice. So let's say I'm not sure who her parents are for the purposes of this process. So to begin with, to use this tool, I'm going to type in the name of her birth parents, Daniel and Rebecca. And again, this is the name of the legal parents defined as biological or adoptive, right? So Rebecca and I are her birth parents. It's going to ask me a couple of questions to determine which parent is going to complete the FAFSA. And we'll go through these together in various scenarios. Now, Rebecca and I are married to each other. So in this situation, both Rebecca and I will be parents on the FAFSA. But you can't just stop there. You got to read a little farther down. It says the student only needs to invite one parent to the FAFSA form, Daniel or Rebecca. If the parents file taxes jointly, only one parent is required as a contributor and will report information for both parents. So since Rebecca and I file taxes together, we file jointly, married filing jointly, it's just going to be one of us that needs to have an account or a login to be able to access the FAFSA. That one person could be me, or it could be Rebecca, it doesn't really matter, but only one of us needs to have a login. So only one of us needs to fill out and create an FSAID. That's important. Now, let's say instead we filed separately, or let's say neither of us filed, or one of us filed as head of household and the other didn't file. If any other situation is the case where we file taxes separately from each other, or one of us doesn't file, then both of us have to be contributors because the information from the IRS needs to be checked against both of our records. So really important concept to understand. If we file taxes together, only one of us needs to be a contributor. But if we don't file taxes together, then both of us have to be contributors. And if we both have to be contributors, then we both have to have FSAIDs. Again, so just making sure that you see that distinction here, right? That it has to be, it's based on the tax filing status as well as the marital status. Okay, so let's go back. Let's answer this question differently. Let's say that we aren't married to each other, right? Let's say that we never got married, or we married but were divorced, either one. The next question asks, do Daniel and Rebecca live together? Well, let's say we never got married. We never legally got married, but we live in the same house. So the answer is yes. In that situation, you see it's still only one parent invited. It still says you should report your marital status as unmarried and living together, And you still see this language about if we file taxes together, only one parent required as contributor. If we didn't file taxes together, both parents required as contributors. So if you're in an unmarried situation, but you're living together, again, it'll be one or two contributors based on whether or not you file taxes together. Okay, let's go back. We're not married, we're not living together, we're divorced, we're living in separate places. So then the question becomes, which parent do you file the FAFSA with? And this is an important piece to understand. So if you're in a divorced family where parents are divorced or not married, living opposite from each other or away from each other, the next question the FAFSA asks you is which parent provided more financial support for the student over the last 12 months? Notice it doesn't ask where the student lived. It doesn't say, did the student live with Daniel? Did the student live with Rebecca? It doesn't ask where they live. Doesn't ask who claims the student on the tax return. That's not important. What's important is who provided more financial support over the last 12 months. And you're instructed to choose the parent that gave more financial support. They go on to say if both parents provided an exact equal amount of financial support, or if neither supports the student financially, then you select the parent with a greater income and assets. Otherwise, you have to choose the parent who provided more financial support. And that parent may or may not be the same parent the student lives with. So let's say the student lives with me, but mom actually provided more financial support. So it's Rebecca who is the one who provided more financial support. The next question asks, did Rebecca remarry? Well, yes, actually, she's remarried and she has a new spouse. So in that situation, you will see, again, it's actually asking for information from Rebecca and Rebecca's spouse. Both pieces of information are needed. Notice my information is not needed on the FAFSA because I'm not considered part of the household that the FAFSA is based on. And you'll see, once again, if Rebecca files taxes jointly with their spouse, only Rebecca is required to contribute. If Rebecca and their spouse didn't file taxes jointly, then both of them need to be contributors on the FAFSA form. Okay, so I hope this is helpful for you. If you have questions about this, maybe we can paste into the chat. If I can ask one of my friends who are monitoring the chat, if we can paste into the chat the link to the FAFSA page, the FAFSA Apply Parents page, in case you have questions and you want to look at your situation. Again, you can take a look and go through and answer these questions yourself. So how do I go ahead then and create my FSAID? Once I identify, well, I need one for the student, one for one parent, and maybe one for a second parent. How do I do that? What's the process look like? Well, the way you do that is you go to the webpage studentaid.gov, and this is where we begin. And you'll see up here, by the way, that I could do this in English, or si hablan en español, puedo hacerlo en español también. So you can go back and forth between Inglés, if English is your native language, or español. Si ustedes hablan español, puede hacerlo en español también. Pueden hacerlo en español también. By the way, also, you could, if you speak a different foreign language, like maybe Haitian Creole or French or some other foreign language, you can also use Google Translate and see the page in whatever language works for you. Okay, so once you are here, you need to create your FSAID. Let me start. Okay, so I also want to, Gabe, I'm going to ask you again, if you can type those questions in the Q&A, that would be great. But since I see it there, I will answer. Remember, living with parents doesn't matter. The question is, which parent provides more financial support? If you have a legal guardian, you're considered independent. You don't need to file with parent information. It's just you on your own. Okay, so let's go look. And again, I'll remind you, Veronica, type that into the Q&A. So let's go on and look a little further then at the information on the website. So we're here at the website. You're going to click on create an account. Now, if you already have an FSAID, because maybe you did a FAFSA for another child or you did your own FAFSA, you don't have to create a new FSAID. You can use the same one you've used all the time. But if you haven't, or you're the student and you're brand new, you need to create one. You're going to click on the piece here that says create an account. And when I do, you'll be taken to this page, and I'm going to walk you through how to create your account. You'll see whether you're a student, parent, or borrower, you need to create your own account to apply for, receive, and manage your federal student aid. A reminder that, again, each student has to have one, and each parent who's going to be a contributor has to have one. If you don't remember, you can always get a reminder, and we'll show you that a little later as well. But let's get started. So if I'm going through and doing this for the first time, the very first screen I'm going to see asks me for some basic biographical information. My first name, my middle initial, my last name, my date of birth, and my social security number. Really, really, really important. So let me highlight a couple things here. Number one, put in your last name and your first name and your middle initial that are your legal names. So for example, let's say your name is Daniel Ramon Sebastian de Garcia, right? And you go by Danny Garcia. If I put in Danny Garcia, it's not going to match my federal records. I need to put in exactly what is listed on my social security card, exactly what's listed on my birth certificate, exactly what's listed on my passport. So if it's Daniel Ramon, or whatever I said, Sebastian de Ramon Garcia, I want to put that whole thing in there, because otherwise I will fail a match. And you really need to make sure that you match, because it's going to run against the Social Security Administration database to make sure that you are in fact typing in the right information and it is really, really you. For students, you have to have a Social Security number to enter this information. You have to enter with a social number. That Social Security number better be correct, so please make sure to enter the correct Social Security number. Again, it's going to be matched against your record to make sure it is really you. Now, there is a requirement that students have a Social Security number, but parents don't have to. Because if you're a U.S. citizen as a student, your parent doesn't have to be a U.S. citizen for you to receive financial aid. It's possible you were born in the U.S., your parents were not U.S. citizens at the time or now, and therefore, or you weren't eligible and aren't eligible non-citizens, and therefore don't have a Social Security number. If they don't, you can click this box and go on. But again, you don't want to do that if you're a student. If you're a student, you always want to enter your actual Social Security number. If you don't have it, you should stop and go find it. Don't click this box and move forward as a workaround. Only click this box if truly you don't have one and you're the parent of a student applying. Okay, so again, make sure this information is valid. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint because I'm not going to submit the form. I'm going to show you what it looks like on some of these other pages, though. Okay, we talked about SSN. The very next page asks you to set up your account information. So your account information includes your username. That can be anything you want it to be. And if it's in use already, they'll let you know. Your email address and your password. So a couple of things here. Remember that each of you is going to have a separate account. So parents are going to have an account, maybe one parent or possibly two, based on their filing status. And the student's going to have a separate account. The account being a combination of a username and password. Because they are separate, you need to make sure that their email addresses are separate as well. You cannot use the same email address. So if you're two parents and you both want to create contributors' records, you need to have different email addresses from each other. You cannot type the same one. You will get an error message. So create your username. It could be your email address. For mine, it is. Create your email address or say what your email address is, confirm it, and then type in a password and confirm your password. You want to remember that password, write it down someplace, store it so you have access to it. Once you do that, you're then going to type in your mailing address. This is also really important. If you are a non-citizen, so you're not a U.S. citizen, you're not an eligible non-citizen, you're not a permanent resident, but you're the parent of a student who is, you want to make sure this mailing address matches exactly what the student's going to type in later on the FAFSA, because they're going to use mailing address to match your record. So I'll give you an example. So David is a student who's a US citizen. His mother, Monica, is not. Monica never became a US citizen. Monica gave birth to David while she was in the US, but she's a citizen of the UK, United Kingdom. So Monica types in her mailing address, and when David goes to invite her later on the FAFSA, if he doesn't match character for character what Monica typed, it will never find Monica. So it's really important that Monica keeps record here of exactly what she typed in as her address. So when David invites her to his FAFSA, he can make sure to invite her using the exact same information. If he abbreviates street as ST, but she wrote out the whole word street, it will not match. So again, this is only important if your parent is not a US citizen, not an eligible non-citizen. Otherwise, it's not so important that it be exactly character for character, but that's an important piece to know. You also are asked to provide your mobile phone number so that they can use that as a way to text you to confirm that you're really logging in. And again, I would say you want to do that if you can. So you've got mailing address, you've got mobile phone number. The next screen asks about your communication preferences. How do you prefer to get information? I highly recommend you choose email. You don't want to wait and have postal mail delivered to you when the Department of Education is trying to reach you. And if you're comfortable with it, I would choose email or text message as your optional communications. You can choose other languages. So, si ustedes hablan español, pueden select. You can select Spanish there instead of English if you want to. So that is a possibility as well. The next screen asks you to set up some challenge questions. So if you forget your password or forget your user ID, you can set up some challenge questions for yourself. They have suggested text if you drop down each of these. They're suggested questions, but you can also set up your own if you prefer. And once you do that, the last two steps, which are listed here as confirm and verify and enable two-step verification. So just to walk you through those, that will confirm what you've already provided, and it'll set up a way either by using your email or by using your cell phone, or you can download an app to your phone called an authenticator or authentication app to confirm when you log in using a two-step process. So when I log into my FSAID, it's going to send me a note that says, hey, are you really logging into your FSAID? Here's a 6-digit code. Please type that code in. So I'll show you how this works in reality. So let me open up here. So let's go back, because there was a question about what happens if I forget my code. So let's click login. So here I am logging in. It says, what's my code? Now, I know mine, and I'm going to type in, I'm not going to let you see my password, but I'm going to type in mine right now and show you what happens when I log in. So it's going to say two-step verification. Do you want me to send a message to your cell phone or to your email confirming that it's really you? And I'm going to send a message to my cell phone number. I have my cell phone handy. I just got a text message. It's giving me a 6-digit code, which I'm going to type in. And that 6-digit code is going to change every time. And I am now logged into my FSA record. So you can see that is the way the process would work. You can see I've done a 24-25 FAFSA. I've done a 25-26 FAFSA. I took loans. I've paid them off. So all of that information. Okay, so I'm going to log out for a second. So let's say I forgot what my password was, and I wanted to log in. And all I remember is my phone number. I don't remember what email address I gave. I can click forgot my password. And if I type in my phone number and my date of birth, and click continue, it will send me a reminder to my phone or to my email, or I can choose to answer some challenge questions and regain access to my record if I need to do that. So that is the process by which you create, or if you need to go back and re-access your record, you can do that by using the system to get access to your record. So again, really important that you do this. And again, you're going to do this a couple of times, once for you as the student, and potentially once for the parent, or maybe 2 times for the parent, for one for each parent, depending upon whether your parents file taxes jointly or not. Okay, so that was step 1. That is the way this process works. What's going to happen next? So once you finish this, it's going to take 3 to 5 days for you to get a confirmation that your FSAID has been created and validated. You don't want to do anything else in those 3 to 5 days. Here's why. What's happening behind the scenes, it could be as fast as 24 hours, but generally it's 3 to 5 days. What's happening behind the scenes is all the information that you just typed in is being matched against a whole bunch of databases. It's being matched against the Social Security Administration, against the Department of Homeland Security database, against the US government databases of various sorts, Veterans Affairs, etc. The reason all of that match happens is because we need to prove you are who you say you are, so that when you do your FAFSA, you get direct access to the IRS data that belongs to you. That is your IRS information. So you can't continue to do anything else on the FAFSA until you take that first step and get your FSAID or FSAIDs for you, students, and potentially for a parent or parents. So what we're going to do after tonight is we're going to stop and pause. We're going to invite you to come join us on February 25th, which is 3 weeks from today. So we're giving you lots of time, where we will actually go through and do the FAFSA step by step by step. And I will show you, much like we're doing tonight, question by question, how to answer the FAFSA. But this gives you time between now and then to go ahead and get your FSAID, to get all the information you need, to make sure you talk to your parents if you're a student attending by yourself tonight, to make sure if you're a parent you talk to your student, if you're a parent attending by yourself tonight. And we will meet again, and we'll record it on February 25th to go through and do the next stage of this. If you want to register, if you haven't yet registered for that event, there are a couple of ways you can do it. This is the direct link. Also, I've created a tiny URL, tinyurl.com/bridge-to-life, B2L, FAFSA Feb 25. So you can go to that link, or you can take a picture of the QR code. Any of that will get you to the registration for our next webinar. Again, students and contributors should attend together. If you can bring your parents with you, or if you're a parent, if you can bring your student with you, we will get information. It'll be easy. You can actually follow along and complete the FAFSA section by section as we go. If you can't attend that evening, register anyway, and we'll send you a copy of the recording after the evening is done. And reminder, you can complete the FAFSA independently once you get the note saying your FSAID has been completed. If you don't want to wait 3 weeks, you want to go ahead and do it anyway, you can start and wait and come back and listen to us. Really up to you as to how you manage that. So a reminder, these are your 3 steps. Number 1, register for your FSAID tonight. Make sure you get that handled, 1 for you and potentially 1 or 2 for your contributors. Join us on February 25th for that FAFSA completion webinar, and go ahead and complete the FAFSA as soon as you're able. Join us on the 25th and we will step through it step by step. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to answer any questions you have. Let me turn my light on because it got a little dark. And let me go to the Q&A. So please feel free, if you have questions that you would like to ask, we can take time now. I can log back in and show you anything on the website you might need to. But if there are other questions, let's take a look at them. So I know Stefan and Bridget have done a great job of answering questions. So let's see, are there other questions that folks have that I can answer, or anything Stefan or Bridget, that you want me to address that came through?
I've got one. So I'm not sure exactly what their status is. This says they entered, it's in Spanish, paro humanitario. Not sure which status that specifically is for the daughter, but she doesn't have residency. So they're trying to figure out if she can apply for FAFSA.
So let me do this. The question is eligible non-citizen, and the eligible non-citizen
Correct.
status is dependent. And let me pull it up, and I will share because that's a great question. So hold on, and perhaps I can paste this into the chat, this link, and you can share it out as well. So here is the link to that, Stefan, if you can paste it out. So I will say, and if I move this into Espanol, this might be helpful. Okay. So aquí está. Si una persona admitida a prueba, or I suppose if you're a ser inmigrante condicional, but there's information here on this website about all of the different statuses. So this may be your best source. Thank you for that, Stefan.
We have one person with their hand raised, and I'm not sure if they're a call-in listener. I can't use the Q&A function. Evelyn Herrera, may I allow her to unmute?
Please.
Okay.
Hi, Evelyn. How can I help? You're still on mute, but you can now unmute and ask your question if you'd like to. If you can find that unmute button, that's always a trick. While she's figuring that out, let's see if anyone else has any other questions we can answer. Sean, go ahead. If you want to type your question in the chat, you can do so. Or it looks like you can now unmute as well if you'd like to.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
I can.
Hi. So this is Sean Mom. I just had a quick question. So he went through the process of registering, like, the name, the date of birth, the address and everything. And as far as the ID, so it says, I guess we have to wait the 3 days in order for it to verify to get the ID.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And once you wait those 3 days, you'll get an email. He will, to his email address that says your FSAID has been validated. And once he has that email, then again, he can start his part of the FAFSA. If you're going to do it with him, you also need to do the same for your records. So do you have an FSAID for you yet?
No, I did not. That was going to be my next question. Do I have to also register for myself as well?
Well, again, if he are you the parent who contributes more than half of his support?
Yes, I do.
Yep. So then one of you, yeah, then you will need to register as a contributor. You'll have to wait for your 3 days until yours is validated as well. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
We have Fedman.
Hi, Furman. How can I help you? What's the question?
Fedman, you're already unmuted, so you can just start talking.
While Firman's figuring that out, we do have a couple of questions that are coming up in the Q&A as well. So if there's a question that says, if we haven't submitted taxes, can my daughter go ahead and do the FAFSA? Yes. And just to answer that question specifically, the tax year that is provided on the FAFSA is always a year or so past. So the FAFSA you're doing right now for the 25-26 academic year actually uses 2023 taxes. So hopefully you've already done your 2023 taxes. So even though you might be working right now on your 24 taxes, you don't need those. You need your 2023 taxes. So again, that means probably you'll already have your tax information ready to go. If you are late on your 23 taxes, you want to make sure that you get that done as soon as possible. But chances are most people have already done their 2023 taxes. Stefan, you answered the question about the student. Great. How does the FAFSA work in conjunction with Bright Future scholarships and Florida prepaid? Great question. So this gets into how we put a financial aid, what I would call a package together. When you apply for financial aid, we take a look at what comes out of your FAFSA. We look at your eligibility for federal aid as well as for other financial aid. So, but let me distinguish. Florida prepaid is not a financial aid source. Florida prepaid is a way to pay. So some families pay by writing us a check. Some families pay by cashing in an asset they've been saving, like writing money from their, from their savings account. And some parents pay using Florida prepaid. So that's not financial aid. That is a way to pay. Differently, Bright Futures, right, and other scholarships, when you apply for financial aid, we're going to look at all of the possible forms of financial aid you might qualify for. We put together what we call a financial aid offer. We package that together and we give that to you as part of your financial aid process to determine how much financial aid you might qualify for. So will the funds for Bright Futures and Florida Prepaid be on hold meantime if the scholarship is used first? So the way that priority order is going to depend on the individual institution and their awarding policies and what kind of scholarship you're talking about. So there's no easy answer to that one. But again, you should take a look or talk to the college or wait for the award or the financial aid offer before making that decision. You'll be able to see that. Evelyn, sorry, go ahead, Stefan.
Do you hear me?
Oh yeah, Furman, we do. We do.
No, I'm sorry. I think someone else was going to speak before me. I'm sorry.
No, please. No, go ahead. Go ahead. We were going to introduce you.
I don't think if I understood correctly the previous question, but in fact, my junior, we're trying to apply for scholarship for sport scholarship. So was your answer yes? We can apply in conjunction with both FAFSA and scholarship at the same time?
Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay. And I think I forgot my previous the other question I was gonna make before, but I know how to open the mic now. So I expect I can remember and let you know before. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, Daniel, I was gonna say an example of the scholarship situation you were referring to at Broward College. That's where my full-time job is. Generally, scholarships go towards a student's tuition first. So Bright Futures would cover, in this, let's say you have financial aid after your Bright Futures, then the financial aid money would get used. And if there's anything after tuition and books and all of that has been paid, there may be excess money that gets sent back to the student as a refund check. So typically at Broward College specifically, like Daniel said, some schools have different ways they prioritize scholarships and exemptions and everything else, Florida prepaid and all of that. But that's just an example. Scholarships first at Broward College specifically. In Florida prepaid, you choose when to use the Florida prepaid. So you can choose not to use it for one semester if you have enough scholarships and financial aid, and then you can use it the next semester if it's needed.
So Evelyn, were you able to figure out how to unmute? Oh, yeah, there you are. Go ahead.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. You already answered my question. It was related to a Florida prepay and
Great.
applying also for FAFSA. So thank you very much.
No problem. Deetria, I see you have your hand up too. Is there a question we can answer for you? And then I have two that I want to answer that are in the chat.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, I just had a quick question. I am divorced, but my ex-husband, he claims our child who's a senior, one of the children. So I wanted to know, even though I am the bulk and I guess, paying the most financial support for my oldest, even though the father does claim him on taxes, how would that work?
Doesn't
But
matter.
again, we're divorced.
You're the parent. You're the parent of record for FAFSA. If you pay more than half of the financial support, then it's you, right? We would not include your ex-husband. We would not include his income. We would not include his assets.
Oh, okay. So just only do me. Okay,
Yep.
that was it.
Correct.
All right, thank
Okay.
you.
No problem. Okay, a couple questions. Let's see. Excuse me. Sorry. Does the financial aid count as income when you fill your tax out for the following year? So you would think that's a simple question. It's a little more complicated. So let me try to address why that is a little more complicated. So the the issue is, if your scholarship is greater than your tuition charges, it's potential that it could be counted as income. But again, that will depend. And if you're earning work study, federal work study, that is paid to you as wages. That's technically a form of financial aid. So that could be income. So Braden, there's a lot of it depends in that answer. You'll have to wait to see what kind of financial aid you receive, how much financial aid. And I would point you to the IRS site. There's a lot of information on the IRS site about scholarships and how they're treated as financial aid. There's a question. David asked, if I wanted to apply for a scholarship, where would I go? So the very first thing to do is to apply through the FAFSA process. Remember, I said at the start of this, about 30% of all money nationwide offered, almost a third, is offered from private universities and public universities to their own students. At the University of Miami, for example, federal aid only covers a small portion of what we would offer. A lot of the money we offer is scholarship from the university. So if you're planning on coming to university, we consider you for all the scholarship when you apply for our basic financial aid programs. Remember, some universities have other applications, not just the FAFSA. So you want to make sure you get whatever applications required. We're one of those. We use an application, I'll show you this. We use an application called the CSS Financial Aid Profiles. Let me open that up for you so you can take a look at that and see what that looks like. So there is a separate application called the CSS Financial Aid Profile. If you are a student or who's applying to one of the colleges listed here on profile.collegeboard.org, you can see there are a number of colleges throughout the country, I'm doing this very fast, who list that the CSS financial aid profile is required. In the state of Florida, for students applying as domestic students, we are the only university that requires it, but we do require the CSS financial aid profile as a second application. However, let's say you're applying to the state of New York. In the state of New York, here are all the colleges that require the CSS financial aid profile. So if you were thinking of applying to Juilliard or to New York University or to Skidmore or to Union College or to Vassar, they all require the CSS financial aid profile if you're applying for them to determine your financial aid. So it's the combination at UM of both the FAFSA and the CSS financial aid profile that is how you can apply for financial aid. And the way you'll know is if you go to any particular college's website, their financial aid page will say, how do you apply? And you'll see on ours, for example, that we tell you, do your CSS profile, do your FAFSA, give us a copy of your tax returns. That's how we decide who's going to qualify for each type of financial aid. So again, I would suggest that that's one place. Colleen has also provided you in the chat or in the Q&A a link to some scholarship searches nationwide. Those are for private scholarships. And if you remember in my presentation at the beginning, I said there's money available from private scholarships. That typically is a little less money. That is about 6% of the funds available nationwide comes from the form of private grants. And those are grants offered by scholarship foundations or agencies. It's still worth looking at. So you want to take a look at that as well. Okay, let's see. There's a question under parent assets. Do we enter stocks, 401k, and do we deal with both parents if we're filing jointly, or just the parent filling it out? So I want to answer that question. Under parent assets, you're not going to list the home on the FAFSA. You're not going to list any stock or 401k that is specifically saving for retirement. If it's in a retirement designated account, like a 401k or a 403b or a pension plan, you don't list it. Stocks or things that you're saving just in a general money market account will be listed. But your home and your retirement are not listed on the FAFSA. You'll see that, Paula, when you do the information. If it's just one parent filling out the FAFSA, it will ask you about assets from both parents, and you report the total of both parents' assets listed there. Okay. Anonymous person said, I just came to America with my dad and we both have a green card, but he doesn't work and he can't file taxes. What do I do if I need a parent who files for taxes? Okay, you don't. So I'm going to answer this for you. And I'm also going to answer the question that another student asked and said, I'm a student and I don't have taxes. You don't have to file taxes to do the FAFSA, right? That's not important. What's important is that you have to enter your information so we can check the tax record and see if you have a tax return. But if you don't earn enough money to be required to file taxes, or you're not working, that's fine. It will look and see there's no record and you'll be able to move on. So it's not a requirement that you have earnings or have a tax record to be able to apply for financial aid. Reminder that it's just checking to see if there's a record in the IRS system. Okay.
So Daniel, if an anonymous attendee came to America, has green card, father doesn't file taxes, is that child considered independent?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, because again, the father is able to fill out the FAFSA, has a green card, even if he didn't, even if the father still lived overseas, as long as the student is an eligible non-citizen, they can apply for financial aid. The parent can list their information. They will say, I don't earn money, I don't have earnings, and that's fine. I may mispronounce your name. I'm going to try it. Javon Smith? You have a question? If you want to unmute, you can answer your question. Or you can ask your question. Not sure if you can see, but you do have access to unmute yourself now.
Javon Smith.
Javon, yep. And Evelyn, if you are done with your question, if you want to lower your hand, because it looks like you have a question, but. So let's do this. It is 6:54. I'm just going to say again, reminder that we will meet in 3 weeks to do the FAFSA together. That date is the 25th, I believe, is our date for, February 25th, 6 p.m. We'll spend about an hour and a half going through and doing the FAFSA together. We wanted to break this up into 2 sections because the FSAID can be complicated. We wanted to make sure you got that first. Again, reminder, don't go ahead until you get that email from the Department of Education saying that your FSAID has been validated. Once you do, come join us again on February 25th. We will go through and do the form together, and we can talk through from there. So also, we will, Colleen is saying, please make sure to follow Bridge to Life on social media. I will also say, if you haven't been to YouTube recently, Bridge to Life has a fantastic website or page on YouTube. They are at Bridge to Life South Florida. And I will, let's show you that. Especially if you want to go back and look at some of the previous recordings we've done. You can see, some guy named Daniel who does a lot of presentations. But if you go to YouTube, the site is Bridge to Life South Florida 740, and you can see, or just search for Bridge to Life, and you can see some of the previous workshops we've done. And I'm sure once we have tonight's recording, we'll paste it up here as well. So you can go back and view some of the previous sessions where we go through the FAFSA step by step. You can also see the event we did in person on October 1. So that information is all there for you. We look forward to seeing you again coming up on February 25th. We'll do that workshop together. There's a question. My parent account won't accept my phone number, and I've never done a FAFSA application before. What can I do to fix this? So here's my question for you about that. Are you typing in a US-based phone number or an international phone number? What error message are you seeing? Is it telling you that it's not a valid phone number, or the phone number exists with some other FSAID? I don't know what to tell you. Again, you have to have separate phone numbers as well as separate email addresses, so that could be part of the problem. But my best advice is to take a look at exactly the message, or if you can't figure it out, there is a help number, and that help number is 1-800-4-FED-AID, and I'll type that in response to you. It's 1-800, the number 4, the words FED for federal, and AID for financial aid. So 1-800-4-FED-AID. Okay, you answered the question. It's a US-based number that says it cannot be linked to more than one account. That is correct. So remember, just like your email address has to be unique for each account that you set it up, the phone number has to be unique for each account. You can't duplicate phone number either. So parent has to have one phone number, student has to have another one. The reason is they're going to send important information like your password to log in, your authentication, your 6-digit code. They're going to send that directly to the phone. So they want to make sure that the phone number is tied to you and only to you. So you need to make sure you're using a different phone number for each member of your family. Okay. Well, thank you all very much. I hope this was a helpful presentation tonight. I want to thank my partners at Bridge to Life of South Florida, Stefan, Tron, and also thank Colleen for her excellent leadership. I want to thank Brace Advisor Brigitte for being with us as well. And thank you all for being with us. We will see you in a couple of weeks. Have a great couple of weeks. I don't know why I'm pronouncing your name, Bridget, as Brigitte, but I'm giving you the French pronunciation tonight, evidently. Who knows? So have a lovely evening, everyone. Let me give you a little bit of a serenade to play us out of here as we close our presentation for this evening. Thank you all again for being with us, and we hope you have a great night. Let's play Never Be the Same Again.
You'll never be the same.